Let's take a look at some charts on Cardano from this week's article on Brave New Coin. So Cardano is now a full-fledged proof-of-stake coin. Therefore, I'll compare it to the other proof-of-stake coins. It has the largest market cap among all the proof-of-stake coins, which at the end of the day doesn't mean too much considering most of these were 100% pre-mine or had pre-mine elements attached to them. But ADA is now king of the hill. Once ETH transitions to proof of stake, ETH will be king of the hill in the market cap department. Total daily transaction volume. I say this every video when I have NEM or NEO on here. I don't know why this is so high for NEO. I've looked high and low. No idea why their total daily transaction volume is so high. Even still, ADA and Tron both have extremely high daily transaction volume relatively to everything else as well. Tron has no daily fees, but ADA does. It's in the middle of the pack here. NEO again, extremely high fees. Don't know why. Don't really know what's going on with NEO in that department. And surprisingly, Lisk still has high fees, similar to Pivx, which isn't on this chart, but Lisk probably has some scaling issues to tackle if their transactions and active addresses are extremely low, but their fees are extremely high. That usually points to scalability problems that need to be addressed. In the transactions per day realm, ADA is near the bottom compared to its peers. Tezos has surprisingly a lot of transactions per day, and Tron has transactions per day in the millions. I just excluded it for this because if we're comparing a feeless chain to chains with fees, it's really irrelevant because the Tron transactions per day can be spam, they can be anything for free millions of times over. So it's really not fair to compare the two together. And you can see that in the daily active addresses. I almost excluded Tron off this as well, but Tron does have Tether on it now. So Tron's daily active addresses and transactions per day are extremely high, especially compared to ADA. ADA is relatively low here compared to the other coins. Dash has CoinJoin, so it has on-chain mixing basically. Its active addresses are going to be higher than most, as does DCR. Tezos has 80% of the network being staked. There's a lot of on-chain churn because of that. There's constant active addresses which are receiving Tezos, but not necessarily changing in value for any other reason, at least that I can gather. ADA does have an extremely high number of Git commits, and the ADA people are going to hang their hat on this as far as this is why ADA is the best chain ever. I think Git commits are an interesting metric to look at. They're not be-all end-all when you're looking at the value of a chain. It's just developer activity. If a chain like Tron, for instance, wants to just pad their stats by increasing commits, they can. So unless you know what to look for and what you're looking at, commits aren't too valuable. All I'm looking at is sort of a binary thing. Is there development? Is the coin being actively worked on? And ADA, that's definitely the case. There's multiple streams of development for multiple updates in the pipeline. So if we look at where we are for Cardano as far as mainnet, Shelly, testnet, everything up until Shelly was a testnet. Now people can argue with me about that. It says mainnet here, it says mainnet everywhere here. The point is, the rewards were centralized, the nodes were centralized. The nodes are still relatively centralized, but now we have staking pools as of August 18th and staking rewards being released independently of Cardano, the company, or IOHK, the company. The nodes themselves are still relatively centralized, and over time, the goal is to wean the network off of IOHK's nodes. So even in its current state, the network is fairly centralized. It is less centralized than it was, certainly. It is less of a testnet than it was, yes. But the main nodes that control the network are still IOHK. And if we look at the staking stuff, I was surprised to see that ADA is second to DOT in total notional value being staked, behind Tezos, Atom, Algo, EOS are all behind ADA now. And DOT, I don't expect DOT's dominance to last over time. It's a relatively new coin. It's the flavor of the month shiny thing. So that will probably wane over time, as will ADA's notional value being staked. But ADA's total percent of the circulating supply being staked is only 52% right now, where Tezos is around 70 to 80%. So this will all adjust over time slightly, but ADA is definitely dominating as far as the number of people, notional value being staked right now. Again, if we look at git commits, if we just look at 2 repos, you can see there's tons of activity. It's not like fervent, it's not explosive, but it's there. This is just one repo. There's about 15 that are active over the past 90 days. If you're curious, give it a look. And on-chain wise, ADA, because of the chain migration, all these stats look way better than they necessarily are from an organic perspective of people just sending ADA for various reasons. So some of this is chain migration, some of this is speculative, especially Q3 2020, when these transactions are spiking hard all over the place. We have exchanges sending transactions, we have people migrating their own ADA, mean transaction sizes spiked up a little bit as well. So although this looks bullish, it needs to find an equilibrium after the migration, because all of the on-chain stats are going to be spiked because of the migration. And you can see that, especially on the active addresses, they spiked real hard when the migration happened, and now they're back down to the previous range. NVT, an inverse metric of economic utility, is going to inversely show you what it thinks price should be, in that if NVT is falling, it says the market cap has not adequately priced in on-chain activity. But when you know that on-chain activity is a chain migration, you can basically throw this out for now. This will take a month or 2 to find the equilibrium again. Similar to Stellar, when they burned billions of Stellar, NVT dropped way down to an all-time low, which isn't surprising. It's on-chain activity, but it's just not necessarily economic, measurable, organic people activity. It's centralized. Not in this case centralized. In Ripple, in Stellar's case, it was centralized. In this case, it's just a chain migration. So you're either going to move your ADA or it's gone. So you're going to move your ADA, right? If we look at Google Trends did spike up with the migration as well as did price, but since then it's basically back to the previous range, just sitting in the lows, the 2-year range here since 2018 August. It wasn't sustained, which isn't necessarily a bad thing or surprising. It's just, especially when you look at price, none of this stuff was long lasting past the migration. It's going to take some time for that equilibrium on several levels to return to normal, and the community will decide whether or not this stuff is exciting or not over long term. All right, let's look at some technicals. We have 5,200 EMAs, yearly pivots, VPVR, volume, and RSI. So VPVR is showing support at current price level, as well as support at 04. So VPVR is the volume at price instead of the volume per day. The other thing I'm seeing here is a potential for a bearish 5,200 cross over the next few weeks. It's tight, it's flat. It's not necessarily imminent, but it's something to watch for. If you're long or buying here, I'd be watching for this VPVR support to fail, for this yearly pivot to fail, for the 200 to fail, and finally for the death cross to come back. All those are terrible signs for the long side of the trade. Otherwise, this is just a reset and the trend will continue. Something I didn't mention in the article is the potential for an inverse head and shoulders. It's pretty messy, but it's potentially there. Volume has been descending as well since the drop. And nothing really to mention on RSI. It's back to 50, back to neutral, momentumless territory. If we look at the cloud, you might be able to see the inverted head and shoulders a little better here. It's not super clean, but it's pretty much there. Based on the cloud, though, the trend is saying it's definitely bearish. It's below the cloud. Cloud is red. TK cross is bearish. So you're either waiting for price to move up through this Kumo twist for the long side, or you're hoping for this inverted head and shoulders, but it's not looking great from a trend perspective. So cloud is already pretty much as bearish as it can get, telling you, do not long here, do not buy here. This will be bearish continuation most likely. So I'd definitely be watching for touches of the cloud from the underside and touches of the Kijun. If the Kijun meets price and price is still below the cloud, that's an even better short entry than has already happened for this trend to roll over. Otherwise, for the long side, you're looking at a push through the cloud here at 011, sometime mid-month. That's what I'd watch for if I wanted to get long again. Because then you'll have a Kumo breakout, the cloud will twist back bullish, everything will be bullish again. But right now it's definitely bearish. And oh man, what a whopper on this ADABTC chart. It Eiffel Towered all the way back down to the previous support level, the previous consolidation level rather. Even got down below the 200. It's way below the cloud. Again, you see this invert head and shoulders, shoulder, head, shoulder, where your neckline is the yearly pivot at 950 sats. There's a bit of a TKC clamp suggesting oversold conditions. There's no bull div on RSI yet. And based on VPVR, price is kind of in a no man's land. It is above the previous consolidation. You can see the little spike here in volume from this consolidation. So if it can hold above the 200, above the VPVR, regain this yearly pivot, it does have a decent shot at returning above 1K sats. But that's a short-lived trade, I think, from the long side, like 950 to 1100 sats, something like that. Again, if you're long, you're waiting for it to be above the cloud. Price-wise, it could poke through this Kumo twist, but I wouldn't be too optimistic as far as what the trend is showing you. Everything is reset. Mean reversion-wise, it's back to the 200. But there is a risk that this just collapses back down to this previous 10-month consolidation or whatever it was. So overall, post proof of stake migration, the chain has quieted a little bit, especially price-wise. The excitement, the headlines have quieted. Development continues. It's certainly a coin to watch from a distance over time. Technicals don't really look too bullish at the moment, but there's plenty of potential trigger points here on the USD and BTC pairs for some decent long setups throughout October, November.